welcome back to the Real Estate Huddle. Today is episode 130, and we are going to talk about something that can absolutely kill a deal. Unfortunately, we've all been there where, you've got buyer and seller that have agreed to a price. Everybody's excited about moving forward, and then you've got this third party that goes out there to look at the home and determine a value. And what a lot of people don't realize is lenders determine their valuation of a home based off the appraised value, not the purchase price. And so if that, let's say a home's $600,000 is the price that you've agreed to, that appraisal comes back at $575, we've got a gap that we have to cover for that deal to move forward because the lender sees that value now as $575. That can be a problem that can throw deals sideways. So today we're going to talk about that, and it's something that is never fun whenever it happens, but it can be kind of a good thing if you're a buyer, and it works out to your benefit. So let's talk through this, guys, and talk about why sometimes it happens where it comes in low.
Yeah. So some of the possible causes of an appraisal coming in low are rapidly rising markets where comparable sales haven't caught up yet. There's also a lack of recent comparable sales, and then unique properties that are difficult to compare to other properties, appraiser conservatism, and overpricing in the initial offer, which I think that's the most common.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think maybe a preamble like 3 years ago when things were nuts, like everyone waived the appraisal gap because they would never appraise at the price they're buying.
Yeah.
It's worth noting, but that's
Yeah.
we're still getting out of the habit.
Yeah,
and how we price.
$50,000 to $100,000 over asking price, the banks aren't going to appraise at that value. So you had to have a gap in there that said, "Hey, I'm just going to have a much bigger down payment."
Yeah.
Because they'll only lend on that amount. So
Definitely. Well, and appraisers talk to each other. They also read a lot of market stats. They listen to podcasts, blogs, just like we all do. And if they feel like the market is they have a section on their appraisal where they fill in the gap of whether the market is steady, increasing, or decreasing in value. And if they feel like it's a declining market, then all of a sudden they're making a downward adjustment compared to sales that happened 6 months ago. And if it's heavily declining, like it was in 2008, 9, 10, 11, then it's a heavier decline. And so that was brain damage back then. Like doing deals that sat on the market for 120 days. You finally get a buyer, agree to a price that you already felt like you're beat up on as a seller, giving concessions, giving on price. Then you just gave a ton more on inspection items, and then the appraisal comes in low. And it's like, oh, we thought we were done. Now we got another 20.
going for the trifecta.
Just throwing down the trash. Yeah, it was like lighting money on fire back then. It's just awful for sellers.
Probably another thing worth noting, it's huge variables how much money you have down. Mm-hmm. Like at what point do they waive the appraisal? Generally over 25%?
Yeah. 20.
20? Over 20%, this is really less of an issue, but certain price points, certain loan types where the down payment's lower brings all this way into more play.
Yeah.
Then you get into some homes where you've got a huge down payment and they just do a desk appraisal and kind of wave the wand and say, "Yeah, you're good."
Yeah.
They've got enough margin. So
That's like skipping a step. You just roll the dice and hop over that mountain, basically, which is
so
nice.
Why is the 20% loan or 80% loan to value ratio or 20% down payment the magic number?
I think lenders just feel like they're comfortable enough if there's 20% in the home that this person's not going to get foreclosed on, or go.
Or if they have.
Sounds like a loaded question.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know, Brock.
Let me tell you. No. So what I've been hearing, especially in the short sale markets and a lot of stuff, people say it takes about 20% of the equity stake for the bank to go through the legal proceedings to foreclose on a property, to turn around and list the property, and then compensation and everything else from there.
Yeah.
So that's their margin to protect themselves, so that way they can at least become whole again at the end of the day.
They can get out of it.
So that's why if you're less than 20% for a down payment, you have private mortgage insurance, and that is an insurance policy for the bank to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why that appraisal value is kind of in there, is it's because it's the bank's bottom line.
Yeah.
I would think that becomes way more relevant depending on where we are in a market,
Yep.
because that's a little glass half empty kind of approach, but it's probably spot on.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Well, we've seen evidence of all of these. Like that rapid rising market, like Chad mentioned back in 2020, 21, the lack of recent comparable sales. Sometimes you get a community that where you're listing the home that's the first time a home's been up in that community in a year. And especially some of these like condo communities where now it's like the condo appraisers have the hardest time going outside of the neighborhood. Single family appraisers will go outside and look 5 miles out if they need to in comparable homes with comparable amenities and age of home and stuff. But if you're a condo or a townhome, they're pretty glued to your community. And if nothing else is sold, then you might get punished because somebody else didn't update their home and
Sold at a low price.
Sold, yeah, tired listing that just sold and or just sloppy, and now it hurts your value. So what happened in the last 6 months matters, especially in a condo or townhome community. That is very apparent right now. And yeah, you just have some very conservative appraisers out there. I've met so many of them, walking through homes and as a listing agent and gotten to know their process and stuff. And you can just tell some of them, they walk up to the door and they already have some type of decision in their minds that this thing is not going to appraise just by the way they're talking, very negative about the market. And so I've had a couple of those situations where I've just said, you're not the person for the job, or let's talk to the lender and see if we can get this reassigned because I don't like your negative slant on the market, which is not a negative market right now. It's pretty balanced.
A doom and gloom attitude to start with is never going to be good for you.
No, yeah, it's not going to go well. So there's bias, there's conservative bias, and you want to try to avoid those types of appraisers. I think about 1 out of 20 really are just think that they know more than the market, and they think they're God's gift to values of homes, and it's like, no. In my opinion, a home is worth what someone's willing to pay for it, and there are the rare times where a buyer needs to be protected to not overpay because their agent isn't doing their job, but for the most part, markets work, and when buyers and sellers come together, it's for a reason.
Tend to subscribe to that.
Yeah.
I think one of the first classes I took when I was very new to the industry was a really good dude who was an appraiser.
Yeah.
I should probably go back because what I didn't know then and do know now, probably get a lot more out of it.
Yeah.
Because,
sure.
We joke about our engineer buddy, but it's really mathematical. It's very scientific the way they do it.
It is.
Remember
Yeah.
learning from you about the discount because there's an extra bedroom. It's very mechanical in some sense.
Kind of standardized adjustments.
Yeah.
On their cost approach, and they have a cost approach, right? That's more mechanical and scientific in their adjustments, and then they have a market approach. The market approach is more dialed into comps and what the market's done in that neighborhood. So they take both. They usually do the cost approach and the market approach and hybrid those together and come up with a final opinion of value. That's how it usually works. So,
All right, so we digress. Sorry.
yeah, no, it's all right. So as far as like what happens then, right? If the scenario we talked about at the beginning, $600,000 purchase price, and the home appraised for $575,000. Now we have a $25,000 difference. So let's say that this buyer is only putting 5% down, right? They had a 5% down payment, which would be about $30,000 in that case, and they only have $30,000 plus their closing costs, so about $40,000 in the bank, ready for this home purchase. And in our market,
it took them 10 years to get there.
Right. It may have taken them 10 years, or it may be a gift from family too. Family member may have given them half of that to do it. We see that all the time. And so with limited funds in this scenario, now the lender says, okay, I'm gonna appraise this thing. Or now that we have the appraisal back at $575,000, I will lend on 95% of the value, or the appraised value of $575,000, right? So 95% ends up giving the buyer the similar down payment, but now we got this gap where they're short, $25,000 from where they were before, and so they have to here's the options. They can make up the difference in cash. The seller could come down in price, or they meet in the middle somewhere. Seller comes down a little and they come up in cash a little bit, but the lender is pretty much stuck on what they can lend at that point. And there are a few variations to that. If it's FHA or if it's conventional, then there's a little bit of a difference there. And we can talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah, don't spoil it.
Well, think about it. In the market, we talked a lot about when it was a buyer's market last fall, et cetera. Like, this can be a very hard situation, but that's pretty black and white. We can't do the deal as it is.
Yeah.
So that is lower the price, we can make this happen.
Yeah.
And depending on the market, if the seller values it enough, that's a potential option we can get.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've seen it happen twice this year where we've gotten the appraised value down 40,000 in one case and 55,000 in another case, and it benefited the buyer in a big way because the seller they were a week or two from closing, and they're like, we have to get this done because we're buying another house, so I guess we have no choice other than to come down on price. And our buyer insisted, dug his heels, and said, no, we're not doing this. Not going up. And by the way, we still want our concessions. We still want our closing costs paid for. And so that's another thing, right? Is that doesn't factor into the deal. It's not the net value. When it appraises for $575, that needs to be the purchase price, right? Or
the contract price, and then the concessions are below that.
Taken off of that still.
So.
Yeah. So anyways, hope that makes sense. But it obviously depends on market conditions big time. I mean, if you're in a seller's market, then buyers may just forego and say, hey, we'll make it happen. We'll get a bigger gift from family to make this house work for us because there's nothing on the market.
Yeah, if it's a seller's market and they've got, they had 50 showings in their opening weekend, obviously they're not going to, they've got multiple options sitting, on standby.
Yep.
But if you've got one showing in 3 months, it's really hard to get that buyer. So they're probably more willing. So it's just that leverage there.
It sounds like such a hard bridge to cross, but if the market's in your favor as a buyer, this is plan A. Easiest thing we could do in this situation is get them to lower their price, and we're back whole.
Yep, absolutely. And if there's competing offers, that helps a lot to just justify the value even more. So, but renegotiating the price isn't the only option. So sometimes buyers just decide to cover it, and that's more in those sellers markets that happens.
I think that's where the situations here, if you've got cash, this maybe it's a higher priced home, maybe it's not 600, it's 800, and they've got a lot of money down. This is a situation where if you can find the cash, we as the buyer, we cover it.
And if you're putting 30% down and you go to 27% down, like that doesn't, it doesn't really impact you because you're still able to.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the right realistic example because why didn't we already have 20% down, which you just said is the magic? Maybe they're planning for the renovations down the road, so they have it. It wasn't in the deal.
That's where having larger down payment gives you more flexibility to make the deal work.
Yes. So if money's not the problem, you really want it, the emotion can kind of kick in.
Yeah.
If you really there's nothing out there, I got to figure this out because I already sold my house, I got to be et cetera. There's got a lot of other reasons.
The movers are hired.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is when you have the cash, if you can buy yourself out of this pain, great. Not everyone can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of the other options that you can go through with is seller provide more concessions to try and close that gap between that. So you can do that. You can increase the down payment as we've kind of talked about. You can dispute the appraisal. FHA appraisal sticks with the house for 6 months. So they would have to eliminate anybody buying an FHA mortgage and go to someone who's doing a conventional mortgage if you're the seller and
Or accept that previous
or
value.
accept it, right? If the seller's unwilling to change, they got to realize that that's a black mark on their property for 6 months. So anybody who's doing FHA, conventional, you can just order a second appraisal and have it reevaluated, and hopefully they'll have better results at that time. So
What do you do when you have two appraised values? Is it the average or just the highest? I don't know the answer.
It's you take the one that's this. I mean, that's true. If the second one comes in low, you'd stick with the first one. If it's conventional.
So you pick the higher?
Yep.
I think it's worth noting that, because we through this FHA loan, like there are limitations on the percentage of the asking price that you can ask back for in concessions.
Mm-hmm.
So there's limitations, 6% for FHA, it's less than that for traditional.
Yeah.
Anyway, my only point is you can't always solve it with concessions.
Well, concessions, yeah, they aren't purchase price, so concessions, provides concessions, which I would say is lowering the price is their concession.
Okay.
So instead of, but that's really kind of the best case scenario on a buy side is that the seller lowers the price to the appraised value and they just accept it and move on.
Yeah.
So on the sell side, if you've got merit to go through that and your listing appointment or listing agent was working the deal properly and you've got comps that justify it, they should have been there working with the appraiser and trying to, balance that out, and that's where they could go contest it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it's funny because like this report paid for by the buyer, it is the buyer's report. It's their property basically, right? Intellectual property. And so the listing agent, whenever you find out about an appraisal coming in low, you immediately go straight to guns, right? And you try to like dispute the appraisal. But you need permission from the buyer to be able to dispute it. So it's the buyer's right to just hold out with the appraisal they have, and they don't have to allow you to dispute it. But as a listing agent, you want to, and you hope that the buyer's willing to let you do that. And in a lot of cases, buyers are. They'll say, yeah, sure, go ahead and shoot your shot, see if you can do it. And if you don't, then we're even more digging our heels, right? Because we've attempted twice, and now it's not working.
or if you go to contest it and the appraiser holds their ground,
Yep.
that just reinforces the fact that this is market value for the home according to them.
Yeah, that there weren't any mistakes made, that
Yep.
sort of thing. So it's always an interesting tug of war when that happens, but there's an appraisal objection that you can send over, and then an appraisal resolution, form that we use to get through that and help people stay on their way to closing. And it doesn't always work. Sometimes the deal really does blow up because of appraisal. And when you're that close, 1 or 2 weeks away from closing, it's painful when that happens.
Yeah,
For sure.
And fortunately, we haven't had that happen too often to anybody on the team, but we're also looking at comps and working with the listing agent to say, hey, what comps did you use to come up with that list price, and make sure that there's a kind of a sanity check before we even write an offer on a lot of things.
Yeah.
So we've got, pretty good grasp of the market conditions to help us with that. There's some folks that are just, hitting the numbers on the spreadsheet and calling
Yeah.
it good, and not
That's
really
true.
paying attention to it and saying, no, we'll just deal with that when it comes up. It's like, no, that's that's a recipe for disaster when you're
Yeah.
3 weeks into a 4-week close.
Yep.
And all of a sudden a big deadline and numbers are off like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's interesting. We've seen 4 come in low this year already, and it's been all buyer deals that they come in low on. And the crazy thing is we're still seeing our listings sell in, 8 days in a lot of cases, and 19 days on average for the 700 to a million range. And so when homes are selling that quickly, how, to me, it's like, how can they be priced really high? In most cases, buyers they're paying, what I feel like is market value for the home in this market, but appraisers tend to have a negative slant right now. So it's just, I don't know what they're reading, but it doesn't seem like it fits with reality of what's actually going on in our market. So it's crazy. But
We should have on the podcast, the dialogue after the fact. We can just share more opinions about certain appraisers,
totally.
because they probably had the heyday and they had a lousy few years, and now they're back in the driver's seat.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's tough to get into appraising too. I mean, you got to follow a really experienced appraiser around and be an apprentice for it's hours. I mean, there's a lot of time that you have to do that, and most appraisers, there's just not that much of a benefit to take someone under their wing to do that. So that's why it's kind of a shrinking career path, because it's so hard to get into. Just high barriers of entry for appraisers. So it's a little tricky. But to recap, that's what we're seeing here is that this is happening more and more now, and that's why we're addressing it. That's why we're talking about it. But whenever that contract price does not get the appraised price, and the appraised price comes in low, doesn't necessarily mean that the deal is over. Buyer and seller can strategize. They've got several options, including renegotiating the price, bringing more money to the table, getting creative with the structure of the loan. And so there are ways to pull through it with the right guidance to make a good decision so that you can still get to the closing table. But you want to make sure you have an expert on your side that has all this stuff down as far as the knowledge that it takes to get you through these situations when they come up, because it is not fun. And so if you're thinking about buying a home or selling a home and you want to make sure to have your best chance of getting through this step, definitely give us a call. We're more than happy to help and talk over your specific situation so that we can help you with your real estate goals. So we appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.